Hello, we're here with Global Blockchain Summit and speaking with Navroop, Sahdev. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much.
It was really exciting to have you here last year as well, so I really appreciate you coming back. I know last year your keynote presentation was phenomenal and everybody appreciated it.
Thank you.
And I could tell from the crowds today as we were trying to pull you away, it was definitely one of those things where
it's such a pleasure to be here. I think you really draw audiences which are really interested in the content and not the samey stuff I hear at a bunch of other conferences. So congratulations to you.
Thank you so
putting
much.
together such a high quality conference every year.
No, I appreciate it. Really, we look forward to having you back for our fall conference.
Thank you. I will be back.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to just ask you a couple quick questions. So one is, other things you're working with now, what is something you can share with us that you find to be really exciting in the stuff you're involved with?
You know, so you're right. There's so much going on. It's almost hard to list. But I think for me, the most fascinating aspect is, from an economist perspective, what all areas of study that it opens up. And I've been calling economists and putting out this call to action, writing blog posts and saying really more and more economists need to look at the space. Well, first of all, there's this opportunity to really, I want to say, write, engage, and think about the future. And you know, as Gary talked about yesterday in his great talk about the monetary systems in the world, the literature we have so far is largely redundant, and I know it's a huge statement and probably a lot of people would be up against me in arms, but it does not prepare us for the future of our economy and the future of work, the future of entrepreneurship, the future of innovation studies. And I think there's a lot of scope and there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And looking at the economy in a fully connected way, thinking of networks as the underlying structure, thinking of exponential systems and not just linear models, thinking of things like the network effects that you see are essentially in a complex economic structure and not the 1 + 1 = 2 kind of approach.
Yeah, and in a lot of elements too, you can see how we've always discussed this, global economy, and now I think we're sitting on this verge of this new, true, actual global economy in something we could actually deploy. So,
yeah,
exciting times. You're involved with many different, I guess, initiatives and projects moving forward now. So, are there some you can share some details about?
Right, absolutely. Well, the first of all would be the Global Women in Blockchain that we've just launched last night. So, and I think this is something, quite honestly, I've been rallying for in the past 2 years, but I think it's an entirely different thing to put in the organizational energy and actually, get people together, get people behind a cause that really matters. So I'm really passionate about it, and Nina is just a great leader, and she has my full support on that. Another thing I really care about, and again, it ties down to the fact that this is a great conference, a great venue, is the diversity. And so not just women, but also people from different races, right? And different colors, and that's really important. I was at Consensus last year, the big blockchain conference, and you'd be surprised, I don't believe I met a single woman of color other than from India. So it was just, I was thinking about it, I'm like, wow, they will miss out on this new revolution. And one question I got in a conference said, why should women be looking at this space? And I'm like, so the men don't collect all the wealth again? So really, I would want to say, jump on board and take this opportunity. There's more and more scope for women because the attitudes, the narratives, stories are changing than traditional finance or traditional technology. But the brave new fintech space is changing, and it's far more inclusive. Some of the other things that I'm involved in is around fintech for good. So use cases around refugees, how to solve identity issues there. Think, for example, the ID card that's valid in Syria is not valid in Germany. Your education certificates, you might be a doctor in Syria. I've read stories they are driving taxis in elsewhere. So I think self-sovereign identity, functional identity, the use cases around that in blockchain have the opportunity to make this a better world, like as we speak, and not just do an ICO and build an ecosystem in the future, and with uncertainty. So that's the stuff I'm most excited about. Another company that I'm advising is on plastic waste management. So they are creating a token economy. But for every plastic ball that you return, you get a token, which you can then exchange for fiat or other cases. So I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of initiatives that I'm most keen on. Of course, I'm from a finance background, and I think importantly so because I learned this in my master's program, that the pace of globalization and the direction of globalization is actually led by finance, and more so with financial technology. So it's important to be at the core, but it's also important, probably even more so, to not forget the periphery, the 2 billion people who are unbanked in the world. And I think the impact aspect is most fascinating for me and most useful for me, and a positive impact.
Yeah, no, it's interesting in that discussion. You really touched on a lot of the same things that we're thinking here, of course.
Right.
And I think that
you're already doing it all.
It's interesting that
congratulations.
The theme, in a way, I think, of this year's conference, or this conference itself, has been largely around diversity and equality.
Absolutely.
But I think what we're really recognizing, it's not really about the theme of a conference or bringing a group together, and even Global Women in Blockchain, which being launched here is amazing. But I think what it really says is that blockchain is about diversity, and blockchain is about equality. It's about democratization. So I think that really helps us. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think behind this revolution, quote unquote, is this movement for transparency, removing middlemen, and questioning authority, decentralization, giving power back to the people. So there is that larger philosophy that is behind what really is just a technology, and I think that is where the change really lies.
So while you were here, and in this conference this time around, did you find a group, a person, an initiative that you were interested in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are definitely a lot more women here, and the fact that you have a panel of women in blockchain, a panel of social impact, a panel on diversity, so you've ticked all the boxes. But I think in terms of the different topics that I saw, the different presentations that I saw, the one that I resonated most with probably was from Gary. Yes, so you already know this.
Yeah, no, well, I have to say the same for me. It was really fascinating. And I think something with the economics in the background too really
I mean, there's a lot of things that are out there that is a solution to a problem, which is important, but we really need people who can zoom back and look at this higher macro level of the economy and what have you, regardless of the term that you use. I call it as a system level, and that is where a lot of thinking lies and a lot of value-added work lies.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I found was really interesting there too was the idea of putting this into terms that we can understand the gravity of what's really changing from a business/economic perspective, and I thought that was fascinating.
I agree wholeheartedly, yes.
Yeah, that was really one of my favorite things. So as you look into the next 2-year window, we're picking different timelines each time, but in a 2-year window, what are some of the things you see that will grow tangibly, that are changing tangibly as we progress now?
So in the blockchain space or the fintech space, you mean?
No, the blockchain space.
So I think we would see more and more infrastructure built out, which is critical, because a lot of people have been raising a lot of capital with promises in the future, and hence these are security tokens. But unless they start to actually show these things out there, I don't think they would last. So I think there would be some of this cleaning out that would happen in the next 2 years, which is for good and for the real teams and the real products and the services. And I think it's a good question, because 2 years is a good timeline. 5 years is really hard to foresee at this point. And at the same time, hopefully, there are more and more people who are looking at blockchain technologies and distributed ledger technologies in general through a variety of angles. I've had people asking me, oh, I'm a psychologist, and I'm a artist, and I'm interested in this. How do I use this? And then I hosted an AMA, an Ask Me Anything session, and I think that's really exactly your value proposition there. That's the entry point that you bring in, and that can be your forte. So you don't have to be from a computer science background, or you don't have to be a cryptographer or just a business person looking to use this technology to better your processes within the organization. I think any entry point you pick up that can be useful, and really, like I said, it's the larger movement of decentralization and a better world that sits at the back of this, and hopefully in 2 years' time we see more of that. And I think the ecosystem's already exploding, so it's
and
going
probably
in a good
also
direction.
with the same mix and focus that we have now on the social side of it, as well as resonating with the fintech and the rest of it, they'll continue in the same pace, I should hope. So,
absolutely. Keep doing what you're doing.
We're all together, of course.
Awesome.
So we look forward to hopefully seeing you at the fall session again, so you can do the trifecta and continue on with our conference. That would be fantastic.
Thank you very much. I really look forward to it.
Thanks again for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.